it. Final spoiler warning. Okay, this movie is so tough to watch, in particular on a few fronts. Number one, you get this information very early on that this man is not a smart man, that he has a relatively low IQ. As a matter of fact, that might be part of the reason why the whole community has kind of turned on the Avery family and considers them as different from everyone else. And you do get that very strongly. They are treated differently. They are looked at differently. That theme resonates through this whole movie, from the start to the end, all the way to the judge giving him his conviction at the end. And in case you are someone that just came into the spoilers for some reason, that is the big one. Essentially, for the second crime that they try to convict him on, they actually do convict him, and now he is back in jail, sitting and doing time for something that he says, once again, he did not do. And if you watch this whole documentary, this documentary also leads you very strongly to believe that he did not commit this crime, or at least not the way that they're saying he committed it. The defense team does a very good job. I thought that they really did a great job at trying to show the jury how other people could have made this crime occur. And the fact that the most mind-blowing fact for me is the woman's DNA was only found on one bullet fragment that was in his garage. And if you think of the act of shooting someone, there should be a splatter of some kind. There should be remnants of that. If you've looked into blood analysis like they did on the staircase, for example, there is spray, there are particles, there are pieces of that woman that would have been in other places other than just on the actual bullet fragment. And there's something about the court case that kept driving me nuts. They never, at least in the documentary, they didn't show us. Now, maybe they did it in actuality, but they never tied the gun to him actually using it. The only thing that came close was, well, it's the gun that was hanging over his bed in his bedroom. That doesn't necessarily mean that he used that gun. People in areas like that, they go shooting their .22s all the time. I mean, you could be shooting at cans, you could be shooting at bottles. He has nephews and cousins and all kinds of people that could come onto the property. They know, oh, his gun's in his bedroom. Hey, let's use it. Let's go shooting. I never saw any compelling information to tie him to the gun. Not to mention, they did note that the gun didn't have any fragments or DNA evidence from the woman, which, once again, if you shot her with that gun, there's going to be mist, there's going to be spray, could be inside the barrel, should be outside around the barrel. Just tons of missing information. Now, outside of this, if you do further research on it, there are some people talking about the jury and saying that 3 people in particular on the jury seem to be intimidating others, that other people in the jury felt like if they did not give a conviction to Stephen, that the same thing could happen to them. That essentially some of the jury members were recognizing there was some type of corruption going on here, and I don't want to be the one to try to stand up to that, because look at what happens. One of the things that I thought was, quite honestly, just disgusting was the judge's speech when he was sentencing Stephen. And the speech came back to showing the bias of not only him, but all of the neighbors in that area. He believed that this guy had a pattern of being a bad person his whole life. And at least as this documentary presented it to us, he did some stupid things when he was a kid. The story, as the judge was retelling it during his conviction, made no sense. And for the judge to be able to sit there with a straight face like that tells me that there is a deep bias, that the judge was also part of the community and already biased by that information. Now, I mentioned there was petitions before going on. People have literally been, there's a huge petition for President Obama to free Steve, to basically clear him of these charges. And unfortunately, because the president can only act at a federal level, this charge and these crimes are at a state level, there's a bit of an invisible wall there that the president cannot reach through. So that is not likely to happen. However, I do believe there are steps that the president can do to get federal resources to either reinvestigate certain aspects of the case. And according to Steven's own attorneys, that's what it would really take for another appeal to potentially come up or kick through, is they quite frankly need new evidence. Just like what happened in the first case against him. There needs to be some new piece of information that comes out that really gives them the tool that they need to take this back into court and prove that that first trial was a farce. It's pretty crazy what's going on in terms of social media around all this for the people that seemingly got away with framing Steven. Now, there's a part of me that is trying to look at this critically and jump to the other side and say, well, is it possible that he really did do all this? And there are certain things that kind of don't make sense to that for me. Number one, they noted that there was bones of hers found in another container that was much further back in the auto yard owned by the Averys. And what it seems to me like was someone did not burn her close to the house, that they actually went back, further back in the auto yard, and that's where the fire happened that at least burned her partially, and then they tried to move the remains further up into the fire pit. The other thing is, if you are trying to get rid of a body like that and you do burn it in a fire pit, are you going to have no foresight at all, especially being such a criminal genius that you've completely cleaned your house and there is no blood or DNA evidence in your actual trailer? There is a microspec of DNA evidence only on a bullet fragment, but every other piece of junk in that garage, which the garage was absolutely filled with junk, you somehow meticulously cleaned. There was no spray, no DNA evidence on. Someone that has all that foresight isn't going to sweep up the bone fragments out of their fire pit? Really? Someone that has all that foresight is going to let an officer investigate his house as soon as she's reported missing? Really? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then you have the additional tragedy that is his nephew. I believe his name's Brandon, if I recall correctly, or Brendan, and what happens in his case, which is just a complete farce. I mean, Steven is actually relatively intelligent. His nephew, by all accounts, has some severe disorders, and quite honestly, I'm very surprised that they were even allowed to try him as an adult. It really doesn't make sense. Even if you believe the testimony that was given about Steven forcing him to do those things, he was only 16 years old and he was taking special needs classes. He was probably working on the mentality of more like a maybe 8 to 10-year-old, and you're going to try him as an adult? That's not something that I would expect to happen in a functioning justice system. That seems like a farce. So my hope for this case is the new information comes out, all the new attention that has been kicked up around this. I'm reading a quote here on IMDb that this is up 228% in popularity this week. That is insane. So people are definitely circling around this story. I hope that the pressure from that shakes out some new information and maybe we can get something closer to the truth about what happened in this case. Do I think that Steven did it? I honestly don't know, but I'm far too convinced that there is enough opportunity. It's not difficult to do what someone else, it's not difficult to say that someone else could have done this. And that probable cause, coupled up with the fact that he's already been tried and served time for a crime he didn't commit, and he was actively pursuing a huge amount of money against the guys that did that, who are coincidentally the same guys that investigated this new one. It reeks of corruption to me. And it's strange because they tried to take steps to avoid that by saying that they weren't going to have their local law enforcement do the searches, and then they wound up letting them do the searches. And then they literally let one of the same sheriffs pull this guy in and out of jail and show up for his court appearances, and they dressed him up like Hannibal Lecter. I've never seen the hand guards that they had on him. They had these sleeves that completely covered his hands. I have not seen that on any murder trial in the history of my life before. What the hell? It was ridiculous. And quite honestly, I've never seen a murder trial where the person can't change into regular clothes for their court proceedings. They were wheeling him in there in a stupid costume that looked like it belonged to the Hamburglar from McDonald's. Just a farce. It seems like so much of this was engineered to specifically affect public opinion over and over and over, and then relied on that public opinion to get this conviction. It is really pretty disgusting, and it definitely left a bad taste in my mouth, which is once again why I so appreciate his family, his mother, his father, and even his viewpoint of just eternal hope. I don't know what it would take to break this guy. He's already served, decades of his life for a crime he didn't commit, and he still has this hope that, hey, he didn't do it and he's going to get out at some point. So I'm very curious to see this story continue. Okay, so I actually changed how I was going to release this video. Originally, I was going to leave it all one video, but I want you to be able to send me comments on your thoughts as well. So when I post this, I'm going to split this discussion piece into its whole own video so we can have our own comment thread. I'm very curious to hear about your input on what you think about this case, people that have watched the documentary. So that's it. I hope you all are having a great week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know this turned a little long, but I feel very passionate about this, both as a documentary and as a real case, and I hope this isn't the end of it. Take care, everyone. I'll catch you next time on Geek and Dorks Reviews, and then rants about his reviews.